Hi, and welcome back to Ron Hasn't Seen. This week we were supposed to originally be talking about The Sound of Music, but I've got something special planned for that episode, so that's going to come in a few weeks. So this week we're skipping ahead one film in my watch list, and we're doing Shakespeare in Love. And to talk about it with me is one of my oldest friends, somebody I've known for probably, I think, 30 years this year, and
hmm
an actual industry professional, Will. Hey, Will, how's it going?
That's going well. How's it going, Ron?
All right. So today we're here to talk about Shakespeare in Love, the 1998 Best Picture winner, directed by John Madden, not the football guy. Yeah, I didn't watch the commentary on this film, but it's got to be better than the commentary in the early 2000s games.
Yeah, exactly.
He also directed Captain Corelli's Mandolin and the two Best Exotic Marigold Hotel movies. So this is the only thing I've ever seen by him.
Same.
It starred Joseph Fiennes as Shakespeare, Gwyneth Paltrow as the eponymous love, Viola de Lesseps, Jeffrey Rush as Philip Henslow, Colin Firth as Lord Wessex, Ben Affleck, who surprised me by being in this, as Ned Allen, Judi Dench as Queen Elizabeth I, Simon Callow as Edmund Tilney. Paltrow and Dench both won Oscars for their performances, and the film also won Best Screenplay for Mark Norman and Tom Stoppard.
Also worth noting is that Judi Dench was nominated and won her Academy Award for her grand total of 5 minutes 56 seconds screen time, or something ridiculous like that. She was literally in the movie less than 6 minutes, and it got her an Oscar. That's talent, I'm telling you.
There's some talent there, and it's also talent to be almost completely out of character for the historical person you're portraying. So we're going to get to that, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
It also won Best Art Direction for Martin Childs and Joe Quieter, Best Costume
Mhm.
Design for Sandy Powell, and Best Original Music or Comedy Score for Stephen Warbeck. I didn't know at
Mhm.
this time that they were doing two different score categories. I completely forgot about that, or just wasn't watching the Oscars. And they did that
Mhm.
because Disney was dominating it in the early to mid 90s with all of the, Renaissance musicals from like Little Mermaid up through Lion King. And because the non musical people did not differentiate score from songs in a musical. So they had to make two different
Mhm.
categories. So regular scores were getting the notice again. So the plot's a fairly simple romance. Starts with Shakespeare having to deliver a play because he needs the money, but he's got writer's block. So he starts working on a play called Romeo and Ethel, the Pirate's Daughter. He just isn't going anywhere with it because, yes, the concept is as bad as the title. Viola comes from a new money family and she's being married off to Lord Essex because he needs the money. Her family wants the title. It's actually a common thing you see in these period piece kind of films and other stories from the time. But she's big into theater, so she dresses up like a man and auditions for the play because she loves Shakespeare's work and he's fallen in love with her from a party, and it inspires him to write Romeo and Juliet as a parallel forbidden romance. And basically, some hijinks and drama ensue for the remainder of the movie until the play goes off to much acclaim, but the romance obviously doesn't work out because they had to at least try and follow what really happened in history at some point in the film. But I just want to start off with saying I don't think this was the best movie of the year. And I think that was a consensus going back then that it was up against three World War II movies: Saving Private
Yeah.
Ryan, Life is Beautiful, and Terrence Malick's Thin Red Line, which I'm not a big fan of, but I remember you really loving.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Still love it. I've rewatched it and it's still awesome.
I think it was a beautifully shot film. I just thought, and quote Dennis Miller, but I think he did his review of it as the plot of that movie is still wandering around barefoot on Iwo Jima somewhere.
So
But
I don't know how many stories I'm allowed to tell about that, but from what I know about the Thin Red Line, they literally shot every scene in that movie morning, dusk. Oh, sorry, morning, sunset, full noon, and yeah, those three. So literally every scene is shot in those parts, and everybody kept asking Terry what the hell the movie was about, and he's like, "I'm still figuring it out."
Yeah, I mean, great movie, great performances, but really not the most coherent story. And I think most of the rest of his work kind of goes
Mhm.
along with that. But anyway, I would say Saving Private Ryan and Life is Beautiful are both just absolutely phenomenal movies, straight
Yeah,
through and through. And is it the fact that they wanted to give this to a movie that wasn't a war film, or that the three war films split the vote, or was it just the lobbying power of both Miramax and Universal at the time?
honestly, the way that I've kind of looked at the Academy is that generally you think that the project that's won for like the last 30, 40 years is usually the one that's just about Hollywood or show business or entertainment in general. You do something, and you do something romantic, and you do something that everybody's super into, you're going to wind up with an Oscar on your counter. So, for Shakespeare in Love, it was about theater and showmanship and performance, but it was also about love and all the other stuff. Yeah, I think that, but I do think that you're right. I think that there's a good chance the Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan split the vote, and they probably got a chunk of them that somebody else managed to pull ahead.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad film by any means. I mean, I definitely wasn't the target audience in 1998, and I'm still probably not the target audience for this. But it's so far the things I've watched this year, it's been my kind of least favorite. And I've watched absolute classics and other Oscar winners. So, at that point, it's not saying it's bad, it's just saying it's been not my favorite. But just given what it was up against, I always thought that
You,
was odd.
yeah, you can just go ahead and say that you don't like it because Ben Affleck is in it. It's fine. Just admit it.
Actually, I happen to like Affleck. I do think he's a better director than he is actor, which, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a fair assessment, but he's not a bad actor by any means. And this was one of, I
No.
guess, I mean, he did Good Will Hunting already by this point, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. He had
he
done
had
he
been
had done
doing,
Good Will Hunting, and Miramax approached Ben Affleck to be Shakespeare, to be the main character. And he actually, when he read the script, said, "I can't do it, or I won't do it, but I'll play the Mercutio character, the actor."
yeah. And I think he was good for that. I think his kind of
His
almost like
cocky bravado,
bravado,
like, kind of shined
yeah,
through.
yeah, it
Yeah,
really
we both went
worked.
to the same word, so it must be true. Bravado.
There's a kind of campy bravado to him in a lot of his things, and I think he plays it well.
Oh yeah,
And then, so
because the
yeah,
guy is supposed to be campy. The actor that he's playing, he's like kind of a cocky, way overselling himself. But I mean, you also see later on, like in the fight in the theater. I mean, he can hold his own. It seems, or maybe they all can. So
yeah, they explained they were off doing something. I think it was something sounded naval, but and this would be about the time of the right after the Spanish Armada and Britain's growing navy. So
mhm.
they didn't really explain it, and I kind of thought that was weird. But I mean, this movie takes a lot of real history and a lot of playing with history at the same time. Like one of the things I was saying earlier was the portrayal of Queen Elizabeth I. She and it would never, and specifically never went to see a play in public, which is a
Mhm.
big plot point for the movie. And one of the things that got
Let
me
alone, yeah,
was,
yeah. No, she's not. She's not just in the theater. She's hiding in the theater, and nobody's noticed. There's nobody. Like, the entire crowd knows the queen from earlier when they're in the court. It's like, it's very obvious. But then there's this tightly packed theater with standing room only, and somehow nobody. Oh, the queen is what? Who let the queen in? This is great.
but another thing that kind of got me was she was known as the Virgin Queen, and whether that was true or not, we could say she had her a lot of male friends, saw Walter Raleigh, all kinds of things. But
It's a
the
royal
way she
court. They
like
did what they did, man.
right, but the way she like kind of goes, "Oh, I know when a woman's had sex." It's like I don't see that as a very Elizabeth kind of comment, just from her
No.
reputation through history. And that's one of those
Yeah.
things that kind of stood out to me. But on the other hand, Rupert Everett's uncredited role as Christopher Kit Marlowe,
Hmm.
the way he died really does go into history where he was killed in a bar, but no one's really sure why. Some people say it was an argument. Some say he was a spy for the Catholics, spying on the Protestants. Others say he was killed by a rival playwright. Others say he faked his death and became William Shakespeare, which is like the moon landing version, like conspiracy theory, like in literature academics. And it's people don't want to say Shakespeare didn't really exist, so they say, oh, it was Bacon or Marlowe who wrote these things, even
Mhm.
though the time, like, he had plays before Marlowe died, he had plays after Marlowe died. It's a weird
Yeah,
thing, but I kind of like that they played off that part of it a bit.
I will say this: what you just pitched about a movie about Christopher Marlowe killing William Shakespeare and just assuming his place, way more interesting a movie than Shakespeare in Love. I would 100. I'd be at the theater going to see that right now.
And I think that's kind of most my biggest complaint with this is, again, it feels like such a textbook romance movie that they just kind of crammed in, like, it's fan service for, it's a romance movie with that's fan service for Shakespeare fans. And you and I went through high school together with an amazing English teacher where we covered a
Hmm.
lot of these. Like, I caught a bunch of these and I'm just like, and I know I would have caught a lot more of them back then because this is, right after we graduated high school. But dude, it's weird to see, like, it was fan service in this way for theater geeks.
No, I describe the movie more so as okay. So they made a movie. They did it. It was clever. It was a clever idea. I think that's why it probably got the appreciation that it did. What the movie did was took Romeo and Juliet and depicted it as if it was happening in real time, and he was writing his own experiencing of it being Romeo and Juliet, complete where they had scenes where they're performing the fight where Mercutio dies. They're practicing it, and then Colin Firth's character's Essex comes in, and there's a whole rumble, but nobody gets stabbed to death. But I mean, more dire things happen. In the movie, it's like I mean, they're literally doing that scene in the play when that scene in the movie happens, and they're the same. So all he really did was just take the shape of Romeo and Juliet and kind of press it into modern Play-Doh, and then just kind of garnish it with a little bit of historical fun. Because you and I know that Americans have no idea about history, ours or other countries. So you can really have fun with it, and Americans are gonna be like, "Yes, that was amazing, awesome." But historically way off the mark. And
Well,
it's a clever idea. I just don't know if it was best picture of the year clever idea where they're like, guys, let's make a movie about Romeo and Juliet about the guy writing Romeo and Juliet. So it's like a movie within a movie, and everyone went,
he wrote the thing, but he kind of cribbed it, I believe, from an Italian play, like the basic plot.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of his things, like obviously Hamlet goes back Norse stories. I mean, did you see The Northman
Not
last
yet.
year?
I need to
I
watch
really
it.
recommend it. It's very cool. And that is the story. It's Hamlet, but you realize it's the actual kind of like story Hamlet was based off of. It's really fantastically shot. I think that's one of the things. There's that. I mean, I do like the way they play with the history of that. And I mean, I always knew Shakespeare was married to Anne Hathaway. I've been to his house, I've been to his grave. I didn't realize, like, maybe his relationship with her wasn't this good. And supposedly there is a lot of research that, I think there was a paper I found when researching this that I think was published a couple years ago. So obviously not by the time of this film, where he was not just having relationships with women while he was in London, but with men as well. And it really does look like he just happened to knock up Anne Hathaway, who was a woman 8 years his senior. But they stayed married until his death. But he spent most of his time in London and not in Stratford. So I don't think it disrespects his memory. I think it plays with it a little bit. It plays with history in a kind of fun way. I think this movie, my expectations were kind of preset by people always saying maybe this didn't happen to win, it shouldn't have won Best Picture, and that's the mindset I went in, because I think it's a perfectly enjoyable movie. I just don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it's on a must see list unless you really like the kind of fan service or you really like romance movies.
Well, okay, so I'll tell you this. I think there's also a cinema or cinema and film business thing that's overlooked was that in the mid 90s, this came out in this was 98. In the mid 90s, there was like this almost like high art interest in Shakespeare, and then more movies started adapting or incorporating Shakespearean stories without actually being Shakespeare. So like you had 10 Things I Hate About You, which I think came out 3 years earlier, 2 years earlier.
It was about the same time, and then there was modern retelling of Hamlet, modern retelling of O, where like it's the Denmark
Oh,
Corporation. I
Othello with
remember all these things, and
yeah. Yes. Everybody loved Julia Stiles for everything Shakespearean, just like Keira Knightley was working for a while there. I think Claire Danes kind of got the similar treatment of just put her in all these pixie roles where she's just perfect for it or whatever.
I will say the acting awards I think are justified in it. Are the actually all the other awards I think are very justified in this. It's particularly
Mhm.
costume design was brilliant. Art direction
Yeah,
was great. Screenplay that it was clever. There's a lot of
it was
cleverness to it.
clever.
Dench
I was thinking it's interesting because sorry to cut you off, but the one thing I think that's really interesting about that script, just tapping into the things that I've written or acted as a screenwriter on. It's not professionally what I do, but I mean I've always liked writing. I think everybody kind of does in the industry. Um, One thing is that if I had had that idea and I sat down to write the script, I feel like the script would write itself. Like it just makes so much sense once you think, hey, what if it's Shakespeare and he's kind of writing about the experiences around him, but then the things start mirroring on the page what happened to him in real life. Like how do we make it so that they kind of touch on the same moments and all that stuff? Like I'm just thinking Romeo and Juliet, and you're like, it almost writes itself where you just take the plot and just sprinkle it into real life around it. And oh, look, it's referencing what he wrote in the play. And oh, he got that idea. And it's just, to me, I think as a screenwriter writing that, you just kind of sit down and I feel like it would just flow. I don't think that there was ever, it's just funny because Shakespeare allegedly has writer's block in the beginning of it. I think that that would be the easiest script on the planet to write.
and it looks like it sounds like it was fun to write. Like if you're a fan of his stuff, it's a fun thing to do. And
Yeah,
I know
like
you and
I when I was in film school, we were forced to do an adaptation of Shakespeare, and I wound up doing a section really, really badly. Like I basically was really mad, so I made it about that. But I adapted into what's effectively like a horror movie akin to Saw, but I did it with characters saying the actual Shakespearean lines. And I'm saying when you figure out how to make it work, it just writes itself, especially when you're taking a Shakespeare thing that's based on something else, or they just intermingle so beautifully that there's just something really simple where it'll just shoot right out.
but what I was saying is like Paltrow's performance, even though she's not my favorite actress, and I think a lot of that comes from the kind of out there-ness of her personal life.
Like watching this with Gwyneth Paltrow, all I can think about is like vagina scented candle and whatever the other crap is that she sells on her website. I'm thinking about that while I'm looking at this person being just so distracted the whole time. I'm like, there was like a recent article I read just like 2 days ago that had something to do like she's been doing like ozone treatments on her anus or something like that, and she swears by them. And I'm like, why am I still hearing about this crazy lady? And now I'm watching Shakespeare in Love over again. So,
Uh,
which is why the elephant in the room must be addressed. When the Miramax logo came up, I did think to myself, I was like, how many people even in 1998 were warning other people about Harvey Weinstein and how predatory and awful he was? I mean,
yeah,
that's a thing that happened. Harvey Weinstein's has been in jail, is going to be in jail for decades, but
the Miramax catalog from this era is beyond phenomenal. Like from the Disney years when they
mhm.
owned
It's like
Miramax, and
A24.
yeah,
It's like A24. Like with their library that they're accumulating right now is what I think how we all looked at Miramax back then, because it was so many movies like Pulp Fiction. I mean, the list is so long of Miramax projects, just
and
so long
they
of
also ran
big
Dimension, I
movies.
think. I mean, that yeah, all the horror movies of the late night, like it was a golden era for him, and I don't want to not watch these because of his involvement. One, because you don't have to sit there and watch him, but
Yeah.
I think my philosophy with this is I'll cut people's stuff out going forward, but I'm not going to not watch things that have already been done.
So when it comes to crap like Harvey Weinstein and the stuff that he did versus what Miramax is, I think that we have to, as a culture, accept certain certain things that we get. Like the movie had an impact on you, or it didn't have an impact on you. That artist, that musician, made music that made you feel something. So in a way, an artist, when they create something, they create it and they like let it out, and it becomes a part of the culture. It's no longer theirs. It's yours. It's your interaction with it. So you sitting there watching Shakespeare in Love, we can make this a completely unbiased and impartial review process without necessarily thinking about Weinstein, just because it's been out there, and there's so much more art that's out there that's influencing us and changing us and evolving us as a species, that if we were to literally take it off the shelf every time that person then went on to slip up and act like a human that sucks, that can do crappy things, we're not going to get anywhere. So it's awful the things that these people do, and I hope that they get their punishment for it. But at the same time, there's a reason why we are where we are, and it's because people are flawed. And the only way we're going to keep moving on is if we accept that people are flawed, but still try to work.
Yeah, I think another one is like with like Spacey. I'm never going to go see anything Spacey does in the future if he ever does anything, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to go throw out and never watch Usual Suspects again. And Singer, along with that, it's like these things. I'm not going to go forward with them, but I'm not going to change things in the past. Like maybe if I don't own certain things, I'm not going to go out and buy a copy of something in the past. Like Spacey's albino alligator is something that I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago, and
Hmm.
I'm like, do I want to go and get that? I'm like, that one. It's like he directed. He's like, I don't want to support him in that way, so
Yeah.
maybe I
Well,
won't
for
on
me
that
with
one.
Spacey, I mean, he was in The Big Kahuna with Danny DeVito, which I think is like an incredible stage play on in a movie. It's got Danny DeVito and Peter Facinelli, and it's fantastic. And it's got Kevin Spacey. Swimming with Sharks with Frank Whaley. And I mean, that's what a haunting telling of an industry I work in Hollywood. And I think that something, just to cap off my thought also from before, I think that it's also a part of the process. If you see somebody, if somebody's done something that disturbs you to the point where you're like, I can't enjoy their stuff anymore, I think that that's also an important thing to think about, because it's like, you know, hearing all the stuff going on that Marilyn Manson did. I can't listen to his music anymore. I don't want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah,
So I think that that's also an equal part of it. If you're like, you hear that Woody Allen's done the things that he's done, then from that point on, you're like, you know what? I am never going to watch Bananas, or I'm never going to watch Sleeper again. It's just, that's a genuine reaction, the way it should be. So that then, and then when people complain about it, it's like, oh, well, it's so hard. You cancel people. It's like, no, no, no. This is just my reaction to not wanting to support a jerk, somebody who's done horrible things. But yeah, back to Shakespeare in Love.
no, I'm glad to have you on because this is, I've had a few guests who, but you're the one who goes into the obscurities with me, and because we grew up watching these things through high school and college together and beyond,
Yeah,
that we
and we
kind of
collectively had a DVD collection that rivaled the Library of Congress. So
anyway. So the movie is a good movie. It's a good romance movie, and I'm going to judge it on that grounds. I think it's fine. I will once again. I think I've said this on several episodes. I could differentiate between something I like and something that's good. This is something I don't
yeah.
necessarily like, but I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's the most
Hmm.
amazing movie. I think of the I rather watch Life is Beautiful or Private Ryan again and again over this, but I'm glad I saw this. It is a very pretty movie, and
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me.
I will say one thing first, and that is, I think that when I think I was watching it earlier, and my wife Keegan walked into the room, and the way that I quickly thought I have to describe it to her, I think that I said it's a historical romantic comedy. Well, it's a comedy, but it's also kind of a drama, but it's romantic. So, all that. And I'm thinking to myself, it defies kind of all of those, like my gut reaction. I don't want to call it any of those things because it's like it's a romantic comedy, but it's like, but is it really? I mean, it's kind of serious and it's got some serious themes. And it's like, okay, so is it historical? You would probably say no. It's as far it's certainly set in the past, but not in our past or something. So it's just kind of one of those movies that it just seems like it's just like somebody had a pitch for it and then they were like, yeah, that sounds great, go make it, whatever. Put Affleck in it, we don't care. It just seems very routine. There was no, oh, what's going to happen next? Oh, I can't, it's like it's 2 hours of runtime where you know exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the weird thing. It does feel like a even though Miramax was an indie studio, it does feel like a studio produced plot. But that's not always a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing. And
Oh,
everything worked.
it is like in block letters, formula. Like it literally, I mean, the moment you recognize it's the Romeo and Juliet pattern, you're like, okay, I know how it's going to end. I know the shapes in which the ending is going to take. It's going to be this or that, so there won't be a lot of other stuff. But yeah, it's as formulaic a studio rom-com as I can think. It's, the star-crossed lovers, and then there's an inconvenience that comes along, and oh, they have to be separated, and that kind of stuff.
I mean that's about all I have to say, unless you have anything else to add.
The best review that I can give without just rambling is I saw Shakespeare in Love in theaters in 1998. And it has not occurred to me to watch it again until I talked to you about doing this video. So I think that that's kind of the best review I can give. Be like, I saw it 25 years ago. There's nothing else to say. It's just the most routine movie that managed to win like all of the Academy Awards that year, except for Best Director, I believe.
So that's it. That's actually going to wrap up we're going to be doing Sound of Music in a few weeks. I'm doing a crossover show with WDWNT's Deep in the Plus, which I contribute to that show sometimes. And since that's on Disney Plus, it's a Fox movie now owned by Disney. We're going to do a little bit of a crossover episode, so that's coming in the future. But this does wrap up my month of Oscar Best Picture winners. For the next month, I am doing films from the Great Movie Ride at Disney World, or the former Great Movie Ride at MGM, Disney Hollywood Studios, however you want to call it. Because there's a bunch in there that have show scenes and things I've never seen at all. We're going to be starting with Footlight Parade, the 1930s Busby Berkeley musical. So that'll be coming out next week. Will, thanks for being here, and I hope to have you on
Hey, my
again with
pleasure.
something else.
Yeah, let's watch some other movies that I haven't watched in 25 years.
Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy what I do, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below if there's anything you want to comment on the movie or the movies you think I should see. You could check out my Letterboxd under Ron Hasn't Seen to see the list of what I have seen, and I've been cataloging my movies that I'm watching for this, as well as other things I'm watching this year. So once again, thank you guys, and good night.